Oh, welcome to the Tavern, my brave summoner. How many exciting and touching stories have you heard in your life? In a world ruled by darkness and chaos, there are always rays of light, people whose hearts burn with love and compassion. The lady hero of today's story is one of them. Who is she? Where did she come from? And what motivated her to do what she did? You will find the answers to these questions in every sip of this drink I've prepared for you. Close your eyes and feel her fate intertwine with yours. Do you hear me? She awaits you.
Everywhere I go, the light follows.
Luxana Crown Guard, known as Lux, grew up in a noble family in the Demacian city of Hysilomere. Her family, the Crown Guards, were renowned for their loyalty and protection of kings for generations. Luxana's brother, Garen, followed in the family tradition by serving in the army, but Lux always dreamed of travel and adventure. She stood out for her outside-the-box thinking, often defying conventional wisdom and asking questions no one could answer. Despite her magical gift, she feared that its discovery would only bring her trouble, for magic was viewed with great suspicion in Demacia. Once upon a time, magic nearly destroyed Runterra, and in wake of that fear, Demacia was founded, a kingdom where magic was strictly forbidden. Demacian folklore often told of how magic poisoned pure, innocent hearts. Furthermore, in the past, Lux and Garen's uncle died at the hands of an outlaw sorcerer. One fateful night, Lux was returning home when her horse was attacked by a pack of bloodthirsty sable wolves. Fear and desperation awakened the magical light that lurked somewhere deep within Lux, and the terrified beasts fled, leaving the trembling girl alone. That's when the Crown Guard girl realized that she had a magical gift, the Demacian's worst nightmare. Would she too become the embodiment of evil, a monster to be imprisoned or banished from her homeland? Lux feared that her secret would be revealed and the glorious name of Crown Guard would forever be tarnished. Garen began to come to Hysilomere less often, leaving Lux to spend her days alone at the family estate. As time went by, the girl grew accustomed to her gift and slept peacefully, yet no longer trying to extinguish the inner light by clenching her fists in pain. She did her best to keep her abilities a secret. When she was only 13, she had mastered many tricks to suppress the manifestations of her condition. But today, words did not help. She needed to be alone. She could barely hold back her tears and tried not to make eye contact with passers-by. Outside the city, the fields and forests began. The girl walked down the road and climbed a wooded hillside. She sat down on the grass, pressed a clean handkerchief to her face, and began to cry. After she calmed down, she decided to find out what had led to the state. In class, she looked out the window and suddenly felt an inner warmth that she had known before. But today that warmth took on a life of its own. It became uncontrollable and threatened to break out. She felt that she could not keep it inside. The only way to avoid trouble was to leave. After drying her tears and calming herself in the silence of the forest, the girl got up and walked away from the city. She considered the consequences of her actions. Lux came to the statue of Gallio, which her family visited every year on their trip. This monument, made of petricite, which absorbed magical power, served as a defense against attacks by archmages. She was studying the statue carefully when she suddenly heard the low rumble from above. The statue's eyes turned to her, and Lux felt the giant stone statue watching her. She began to run. It was late in the afternoon when she returned to the family mansion. Lux's mother, Agatha, informed her daughter that she had been expelled for her prank. The mother knew of Lux's condition and realized that things were getting worse. She said that she had asked a friend, a specialist in such matters, for help and that he would come tomorrow. This was of little comfort to Lux. She wanted so much to just go to sleep and forget herself in her dreams. But she knew that her problems would not disappear as easily as sleeping at dawn. The light inside her would grow and be ready to burst out at any moment. Suddenly, Lux had an idea in her head. Now she had hope in addition to fear. Her plan might not work, but at least she was willing to try. In the dark night, Lux hurried back past the sleeping guards along the narrow streets to the memorial way which led her to the statue of Gallio. Her heart was racing. As she approached the Colossus, Lux gently touched the icy stone, begging it to relieve her of the burden of her illness. Suddenly, Gallio turned to face her, and Lux recoiled in horror. She let out a bolt of light that struck the Colossus's leg. Gallio bent down and gently picked the girl up. She hid her face in her hands, as if hiding from danger. The Colossus burst out laughing. Lux got over her initial shock. Then the Colossus gently lowered her to the ground and apologized for his prank. He explained that he had never communicated with humanoid creatures before, and that when he woke up, it was only to break something. Lux said she had to leave and started walking away from the city. The Colossus followed her and asked where she was going. The girl felt that the giant had compassion and care for her. She wanted to share her troubles with him. After the story, Lux felt extremely tired from the adventure she had that day. She tried to chase the Colossus away so that it would return to where it was, but it would not and followed her everywhere. Out of desperation, she lay on the ground where the grass was softer and wrapped herself in a warm cloak, deciding to spend the night here. When she woke up, it was still dark and Galio was standing with his back to her. Confident that he would not turn around, Lux quietly got up and slipped out. She walked very fast, trying to get as far away from the Colossus as possible. Otherwise, it would continue to draw power from her magic and would surely be on her heels. Despite her fatigue, she began to run. She had no idea where she was. The only thing she could say for sure was that the cloudwoods were nearby. Lux began to form a ball of light in her palms. A spark of light flashed on her fingers but immediately faded. She did not understand why she couldn't do something that used to come so easily. Without even formulating the question, Lux already knew the answer. It was all because of the Colossus. Suddenly, the blonde realized that human voices were intertwined with the rustling of the forest. A strange hand gripped Lux's throat. Two more stood at her sides. These people had just seen her use magic. They wanted to take her to prison like the other mages. Despite her resistance, they tied her hands behind her back with coarse rope. At that moment, something unusual happened. The ground shook as if with a rhythmic, thunderous rumble that was still far away. And then everyone saw a huge Galio breaking through the forest, leaving a clearing of fallen trees in its wake. The hapless hunters started to run, but before they could take a few steps, a petrified palm grabbed them and lifted them into the air. The Colossus didn't immediately notice that Lux was on the ground, hitting him on the ankles with his hands tied, begging him to let go of his attackers. Confused, Galio lowered his captives to the ground. A moment later, the only sound was the pounding of running feet. After freeing herself from the ropes, Lux looked up at Galio, feeling deeply grateful to this Colossus who had become her friend and protector. Suddenly, Galio frowned. Something had changed in Lux. Something was gone. She no longer shone like the stars. Even though Lux had given him life with her magic, he had already made up his mind and spoke. "I value life very much, but your gift is much more valuable. Keep it and don't lose it." Galio stood up, picked up the girl and gently placed her on his shoulder. Together, they walked slowly into town to face the day ahead. By the time Lux arrived at the family mansion, the sun had just broken over the horizon. Beyond the city walls, Galio returned to his spot beside Memorial Road. Her mother was already sitting in the living room with the gray-haired man. Lux gave the man on the couch a tired look. The girl proudly declared that her magic was not a disease but a gift, and that one day she would prove it to the entire kingdom. Then she ran out of the room, leaving her mother alone with the annuller. A few years later, when Lux turned 16, she traveled with her parents, Peter and Agatha, their official residence in the great city of Demacia for Garen's initiation ceremony into the Dauntless Vanguard. The city made an unforgettable impression on Lux. It seemed to embody all the noble ideals of the kingdom where every resident felt safe. It was there that she first heard of the Illuminators, a charitable religious order that uses magic to help people. After a while, she managed to join the order and became a senior cadet. Spending more and more time in the great city of Demacia, Lux finally began to learn about the rest of the world, its diversity and rich history. She realized that not everyone lived by the same rules as Demacia, and her love for her homeland was complemented by a desire to make it fairer, or even just a little bit more favorable for magic users like herself. Side by side with her brother Garen, Lux walked the streets of Demacia. Suddenly, a woman leapt out of an alley, clutching a small girl in her arms. The crowd rushed toward them, demanding to know if they possessed magical powers. In this kingdom, magic was considered evil, cursed, literally passed down. Suddenly, Lux had a bold idea. She found out that the books confiscated from the wizards were kept at the headquarters of the Mageseekers, a heavily guarded place. Under the guise of the Illuminator's duty to explain the dangers of magic, so to say, she could break in and find the answers. Finding her way through the labyrinths of the headquarters, Lux encountered guards leading a captive mage to the shackles of magical suppression. In the semi-darkness of the cells, magicians languished awaiting trial, and a particularly dangerous criminal, Sylas of Dregborn, was being held in a special cell. Lux, barely able to contain her excitement, managed to get permission to meet him. Gifted with keen senses, Sylas immediately recognized her as a mage, not an ordinary person. He also guessed that she was from a noble family and was looking for a way to tame her magic by hiding it from others. The imprisoned mage told Lux of his gift. From birth, he could see magic in all its forms, but in Demacia his gift was called a curse, and through an unfortunate accident he ended up in this prison, bound in chains that suppress magic. Sylas, on the other hand, burned with hatred for the Demacian system that oppressed mages and condemned them to suffering. He wanted to overthrow the throne and create a new state free of kings and nobles. Sylas' story struck a chord with Lux. She realized what it was like to live in fear and hide her true identity. After gaining Lux's trust, Sylas agreed to become her magic teacher. In gratitude for the lessons, Lux brought him a book from the Illuminator's library that told the story of the events of 11 years ago. On subsequent occasions, the girl brought him various pieces of forbidden literature, which she secretly removed from the locked storage room. At the same time, Lux heard a rumor about the magic that supposedly enveloped the forests and cliffs of Foss Barrow. Lux mounted her horse, Starfire, and traveled to Foss Barrow, located in northern Demacia near the border with Freljord. Lux was alarmed at how quickly her own magical gift was gaining strength, and she wanted to better understand its nature. She did hope that Foss Barrow would provide at least some answers to her questions. In the town she was heading to was the tomb of her great-great-grandfather Fossian. A marble slab carved with the legend of the famous ancestor was pressed into the base of the hill. When Fossian and a demon named Nocturne fell from a cliff, the great-great-grandfather mortally wounded the terrible creature, piercing its black heart with a Demacian sword. Lux stepped across the threshold of Foss Barrow in the darkness of night. From her first steps through the city, she was enveloped in an icy darkness, as if someone was watching her from the shadows. At the Temple of the Illuminator, Lux learned from Mistress Pernal of the kidnapping of Luca, Magistrate Giselle's son, by a dark sorcerer. At dawn, Lux rode Starfire into the forest in the search of the source of the evil. Deep in the forest, risking everything, she called upon her magic to hear the light. The thought of darkness engulfing Demacia terrified Lux. The girl's breath caught her in the throat, as if an invisible hand had grabbed her by the throat, and she felt dizzy. Her eyelids grew heavy and began to droop as if some force was putting her to sleep. A sudden sound woke her. The leaves parted and 5 riders appeared. When one of them raised his visor, she recognized her brother Garen. He was accompanied by 4 soldiers from the Dauntless Vanguard. They returned to Foss Barrow with nothing. The magistrate's son has not been found and the town is gripped with fear. In the marketplace, Lux witnessed the trial of an unfortunate man accused of murdering his family and aiding a dark sorcerer. The man's words about monsters and darkness in humans made Lux doubt. Garen climbed onto the platform. The long silver sword hissed as it left its sheath. As Lux's brother swung the sword, the man whispered something in a hoarse, fading voice. But Lux was able to make out the words as Garen's sword was already coming down. The light is fading. A powerful blow severed the convict's head to the cheers of the crowd. The unfortunate man fell to the platform. His head rolled back and a stream of blood spurted from his neck as well as smoke, similar to a black liquid oozing from a burial pit. The sudden appearance of the specter frightened everyone. A wave of eerie visions forced Lux to fall to her knees. The people of Foss Barrow fell to the ground one by one, as if life had just been drained from their bodies. Lux opened her mouth in amazement as black smoke rose from the unconscious inhabitants and took shape. Each monster was different, defying any clear description. The thought hit her like a bolt of lightning. Gathering her strength, Lux whistled to her horse and told Garen that she knew how to stop it. The girl raced through the army of darkness, trying not to harm the stunned inhabitants. After breaking through the crowd of monsters, Lux paused for a moment and shouted to her brother, "For Demacia!" and turned her horse and galloped out of the city. She was on her way to her great-great-grandfather Fossian's grave. Starfire froze in front of a shaded clearing. Fossian's tomb is the source of evil. Lux stepped onto the ominous ground. A flat mound topped with a pyramid of stones was the grave of her great-great-grandfather. Dark smoke swirled in the sky, hiding images of ancient monsters. In front of her sat a skinny teenager who looked like Luca, the son of Magistrate Giselle. He was bound by the tentacles of darkness, as his lifeless black eyes were full of terror. Lux approaches, her hand on the dagger. Luca nods and rises. The shadow of his voice says that he is eager to take possession of Lux's nightmares and that the demon Nocturne, imprisoned in the tomb, is not dead. It sleeps, heals its wounds, and prepares itself. She was frozen, unable to move but not speechless. The creature in the form of a boy laughed, and the grass around her wilted at the eerie sound. The boy reached out and caressed her cheek. A wave of icy dread washed over Lux at the touch. Lux moved her fingers to the hilt of the dagger. Pain instantly pierced her fingers, but if she could feel, she could control herself. Screaming in pain, the brave girl threw the dagger at the boy. She had no intention of hurting Luca. She just wanted the metal to touch him and transmit a bit of her light. The boy jumped back, too slowly though. The blade scratched his cheek, but even that fleeting touch was enough. Lux's light poured into Luca and the clearing exploded in a blinding glow. There was a fierce and desperate howl as the creature was flung from the boy's body. Pure white flames enveloped Lux, consuming everything around her. The boy sat in front of Lux, huddled into a ball. He lifted his head and looked at her with the eyes of a frightened child. As Lux's light faded, she saw the clearing as it had been many years ago. Green grass, a mound with a pyramid of stones, and a tablet with an inscription glorifying the exploits of Phocian. The darkness that had warped the forest was gone. The clawed trees became normal. Lux felt the bitterness of the darkness vanish. The Lord of Darkness was no longer hiding in the tomb. It was no longer there. After returning Luca to the arms of his grateful mother, Lux and Garen set off on horseback for the southern gate of Phosbero. The dauntless vanguard followed. The warriors were in a somber mood, and the people of Phosbero who encountered them were clearly plagued by a sense of guilt. None of them remembered what happened after the execution, but they all knew that they were responsible for the man's death. After taking care of everything in Phosbero, Lux returned to the great city of Demacia and with renewed zeal continued to secretly study magic control with Sylas. Every time she brought him more forbidden books as a token of her gratitude. In one of them, Sylas learns of a man named Duran, the creator of the petrified stone from which his restraints are made. The mage was eager for more information, but the originals are kept in a forbidden place, inaccessible to him. One day, Garen catches Lux late at night. She lies and says that she helps sick children late at night. Garen notices that there are not enough books on the shelves and that the books are not for children. He sternly tells her to stop what she's doing and informs her that he has arranged an engagement with Prince Jarvan for her safety. Lux is overcome with anger and despair at Garen's decision. Sylas fueled her anger under the guise of compassion. This was because Sylas had secretly learned that Lux was a member of the Crown Guard family responsible for his imprisonment and torture. Skillfully manipulating Lux's emotions, he asks her to retrieve Duran's original recordings from the Mageseekers' vaults. Driven by a sense of gratitude to Sylas for his support and lessons in magic, Lux risks her life to evade the guards and bring Sylas the treasured scrolls. As Sylas eagerly reads the records, he makes a shocking discovery. One of the drawings depicts the Colossus Galio, a creation of Duran, a giant creature made of the same stone as his bonds. Even more striking is the information that contact with the stone does not destroy magic but absorbs it, allowing the Colossus to use it. Lux's last encounter with Sylas turned into a nightmare. Her aunt and brother learned of her secret visits to the prison and placed her under house arrest. Meanwhile, Sylas was awaiting a death sentence. In desperation, Lux uses her magic to punch a hole in the wall and rushes to the place of execution. Hiding from her pursuers, the young girl does not expect to encounter the Demacian guards. The magic dormant within her broke free. In that perilous moment, she appeared, a red-haired girl with 2 daggers glinting in the sunlight. It was Katarina of Noxus, a skilled assassin hired to eliminate the king of Demacia and the young Luxana Crown Guard. And if you, my brave summoner, are interested in learning more about Katarina's dark past and her bloody craft, be sure to write in the comments and I will be happy to tell you this story next time. With the help of an elaborate lie, Katarina rescued Lux, assuring the guards that she was acting on Garen's orders. After being rescued, Lux told Katarina the purpose of her daring act, to save her friend Sylas. She also made no secret of her opposition to the ruling regime's efforts to exterminate magicians. "I cannot do nothing while people suffer," Lux exclaimed. "I will fight for the Demacia I believe in." These words struck a chord in Katarina's soul. In Lux's passionate speech, the red-haired girl saw a reflection of her own rebellious spirit. She decided to spare the girl and confine herself to eliminating the king of Demacia. It seemed to her that this would be enough to fulfill her mission. They said their goodbyes and each hurried on her way. Upon arriving at the execution site, Lux, in a desperate attempt to save Sylas, begs the crowd for mercy and confesses her friendship, but her words are drowned out by a prejudice against magic. In a fit of emotion, Lux embraces Sylas. Longing only for the mage's touch, he gains the power he so desperately craves, breaking his bonds and beginning to wreak havoc around him. After destroying the prison, he frees the other mages and proclaims his intention to create a new state without kings and nobles. Garen, defending the city, fights Sylas, but is defeated. Lux, begging, stops Sylas from delivering a fatal blow. Severely wounded and unconscious, Garen is rushed to the hospital where doctors fight for his life. Meanwhile, Sylas, having mastered magic and freedom, craves power. Lux is horrified to find that her friendly feelings for him have turned to disaster. Sylas disappears, leaving destruction and fear in his wake. Knowing his intentions, Lux is terrified that he intends to kill the king. Now, not only does the fate of Garen rest on his shoulders, but the future of Demacia is overshadowed by the betrayal and chaos unleashed by Sylas. In order for Lux to resist Sylas, she decided to rid herself of her magic. She asked the guards to warn the king of the impending threat. Standing in front of the unguarded western wall of the palace, Lux drank a magic-suppressing potion. She decided to fight the angry army of mages alone with a crossbow. Meanwhile, in the royal palace, events begin to unfold. Sylas and all the escaped prisoners broke through the palace's defenses and got inside, but it turned out that someone had already managed to kill the king before him. And as we can conclude, the aforementioned girl named Katarina was still able to complete her mission. Taking Prince Jarvan hostage, Sylas went out on the terrace of the court and appeared before the Demacian people. It was announced that the king was already dead and Sylas wanted the prince to answer for his crimes. Today, the prince will stand trial before the entire city. Lux suddenly appeared behind Sylas with a crossbow and demanded to save Prince Jarvan, that is, to let him go. The girl fired an arrow from the crossbow at Sylas' shoulder and received a strong and sharp blow to her arm with chains. In a rage, the criminal decided to send Luxana to the afterlife, following the king and her brother. But wait, someone quickly and aggressively made his way through the crowd. Suddenly, Garen appeared among the people and flew at Sylas with a swing. Lying in the hospital, Garen miraculously survived the enemy's deadly blows, and as soon as he regained consciousness, he rushed to the palace to help the royal family, as was his duty as a representative of the Crown Guard family. And so, side by side, Garen and Prince Jarvan decided to fight Sylas. The villain, however, was not satisfied with the scenario and decided to flee with his minions. The next day was the one of mourning. Demacia bid farewell to its king, who had fallen victim to treachery, and his son Jarvan, consumed by a thirst of vengeance, unleashed his wrath upon all who held magic. Innocent people were ruthlessly seized and thrown into dungeons like wild animals. Lux's heart was filled with remorse. She carried the burden of guilt for the terror she had unleashed. Garen, fearing for his sister, begged her not to leave the house. He knew the ruthless mage hunters would spare no one, but rage burned on in Lux's soul. Unable to contain it, she broke into the house where the hunters were trying to capture the mages. Showing her knight's commission and the Crown Guard family crest, she took control of the situation. Inside the house, though, she found two small children clinging to each other in terror. To calm them, Lux risked her life and revealed her secret, that she was also a mage. At that moment, she made the ultimate decision to protect all mages as best as she could. When Lux learned of the mages' hideout in Dregborn, she went there. The mages greeted her with fear and pointed weapons at her, but she won their trust by demonstrating her abilities and assuring them that she shared their fate. At great risk, Lux led the mages through a maze of sewers to get them out of the city. The group of mages led by Lux made their way through dark and dank tunnels. One of the women, touched by Lux's devotion, gave her wand as a token of her gratitude, the same wand that the champion Lux uses in the game. Suddenly, a blockade of stones blocked their path. Lux realized that it was the work of Sylas, who was trying to get away from the chase. And then Garen suddenly appeared from another tunnel. He was angry with his sister. He could not understand why she helped the enemies and not him. Garen was torn by conflicting feelings. His duty told him to arrest all magic users and wizards, including his own sister. Out of desperation, Lux gathered all her strength in her wand and used her light magic to break through the blocked exit, opening the way out. Garen could not believe that his sister was a mage, but he took a sigh and hugged her tightly. Lux and the group of mages decided to find a place to stay for the night. Garen returned to the city and lied to Prince Jarvan, telling him that all the magicians had been captured. Returning to the escaped criminals after the riot in the great city of Demacia, Sylas broke away from the pursuit and joined the rebels in their fight against the ruthless Mageseekers. His path led him to the ruins of Terbisia, where peaceful mages led by Lux had taken refuge. Terbisia was once a coastal settlement in southern Demacia that had been severely damaged by an earthquake in the past. The meeting with Sylas did not result in reconciliation. Lux could not forgive him for his past deception and betrayal. Accepting her decision, Sylas returned to his associates. At the same time, a woman named Wisteria had been appointed by Jarman as the new leader of the Mageseekers. Obsessed with breaking the Mageseekers' spirit of resistance, she plans a public execution to intimidate and scatter the rebels. But Sylas has no intention of giving up. He interrupts the execution, saving the lives of the mages. Garen, learning of Wisteria's new insidious plans, rushes to warn his sister Lux of the planned attack on their camp. Instead of turning away, Lux makes a bold decision. She asks Sylas for help in protecting Terbisia. Together, peaceful mages and rebels fight back against the hunters. The battle ends in a crushing victory for the rebels. Prince Jarman IV, realizing the futility of his actions, issues a decree abolishing the Order of the Mageseekers. Terbisia officially becomes a haven where mages can live without fear of persecution. Luxana Crown Guard is placed in charge of the city. Demacia begins to heal its wounds, but Sylas and his rebels remain vigilant. In the future, Demacia will face another war against the mages, in which Lux will be involved. These events form the basis of the Warriors cinematic created for the new 2020 League of Legends season, but the story doesn't end there. The future of Demacia and its characters has yet to be determined. Do follow the updates to find out what challenges they will face on their path to peace and prosperity. So our journey through Lux's story comes to an end. Isn't it true, dear friend, that her light has illuminated your heart? But remember, there is always room for new heroics and unexpected twists in the world of Runterra. Who knows, maybe you will be the next hero whose story will inspire millions. In the meantime, let us continue to explore this fascinating world together. If my story inspired you, do become a regular visitor to my tavern by subscribing to my channel, and don't forget to leave a tip in the form of likes. Do leave your feedback in the comments. Tell me what the next story you would like to hear from the tavern owner is. And see you soon for another glass of exciting tales from the League of Legends universe.